Namaste. Welcome to the Pulpwood Queen Film Club. We're on our third week of watching films together, and I've got a big night for you all. It's been my birthday week for the Pulpwood Queen, and as you can see, I am now wearing a real Indian sari that's a gift from my friend Lana Neiman. Thank you, Lana. And also, what you cannot see is I was gifted by my friend Stephanie Chance a wonderful light ring. So now I'm no longer in the dark in my home at Murphy's Law. I am now in the light where you all can see my outrageous hair and my crazy outfits that I bring in from my closet. I have collected things from all over the world. Friends have brought me back authentic costumes from other countries because ever since I was a little girl, I've been fascinated with other cultures and people. And so I do this as a celebration of really recognizing that we all have beautiful things in the world, and nothing makes me happier than sharing with you tonight our Bollywood film that is set in India. It's Taare, Zameen with Amir Khan, who is, it's his film and he's also starring in it. Before we even get started tonight though, because it's my birthday week, you're going to have to allow me a little bit of a backstory. So I'm going to stop this for just a second so I can tell you that the reason why I do everything that I do is because I've always said that books save me. When I was a little girl, it was my teachers who recognized something in me that I didn't even see in myself, that were encouragers. And so tonight, with all of you, I want to share with you a story about one of my teachers. It's the Pulpwood Queens Tiara Wearing Book Sharing Guide to Life. And I'm about to do a new updated version for my 20th year because there's a lot of things that's happened since then and I need to expand my book list. But for fellow Eurekans out there, I see Kristen Chambers is listening. I'm going to be talking about a teacher that was instrumental in my formative years, Mrs. Margaret Bolden. And it's in chapter 4 of my book, and it's called Books Save Me. And I'm going to have to put on my readers, you all, because now that I've just approached my 64th birthday, I have to wear these wonderful little readers to help me catch every single word. So, let me begin. In school, I applied the same strategy for survival that I used at home. I would become invisible. I hated calling attention to myself as a child. Not only was I painfully shy then, but I also hoped to hide the fact that I wasn't getting the hang of reading. If I did not understand something in our reading lessons, I would just let it go. Better not to understand it than to go through the humiliation of calling attention to myself. It is ironic now to think about it, but reading, it did not come easy to me. I suffered through read aloud time in school, terrified that kids would laugh at my halting style. Although I can never recall this actually happening, just knowing that all eyes would be on me would bring me to tears, and I just knew that when my turn came, even the anticipation was unbearable. I could not wait for read aloud time to be over so I could slink back in my chair and fade back into the woodwork. I always chose a seat in the very back row, preferably behind a boy who was bigger than taller than me, so I could hide from everyone. My teachers always moved me though, as they liked to seat you alphabetically back then. My rule was never to make eye contact with the teacher. You never had to raise your hand in class if you knew the answer, because when you made direct eye contact, they would call on you every single time. During class discussion, I sweated bullets, and I prayed my teacher, pretty much all my teachers were women in those days, they would not call on me. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I would have to speak out loud in front of the class. I would become physically sick just thinking about getting up in front of them. It worked. They didn't call on me too often. Whether this was a good thing or a bad thing, it's hard to say. For just about 3 whole years, from 1st through 3rd grade, My teachers did not really pay very much attention to me. I did everything I possibly could to avoid calling attention to myself. I succeeded in that goal because I became an invisible student. Once there was a flicker of recognition that I existed, I was caught for a moment in the teacher's eye. In the first grade, my teacher called my mother in for a conference. She had finally noticed me when I had these sores on my legs, which were infected mosquito bites. She called my mother in to speak to her about my legs because the school nurse had informed my mother I had infantago. I needed a doctor's attention immediately. My mother, dressed to the nines, took me out of school and all the way to the doctor's office. She was really mad that this woman had reprimanded her for what my teacher and the school nurse perceived as medical neglect. The teacher, ever alert, was watching me. I was now no longer sailing under her radar. A strict disciplinarian with high academic standards, she called in my mother once more that year. "Kathy is just not picking up reading, Mrs. Murphy," she explained. "May I suggest that you get some reading workbooks?" My mother smiled and listened politely, nodding her head every now and then to show her concern. Even back then, I knew behind that perfectly innocent smile lay hell to pay because I had made her look bad in front of the teacher. Needless to say, after our meeting, my reading, it did not improve. I continued to lag behind, growing more miserable and more self-conscious about it every year. That is, until I met Mrs. Bolden. Mrs. Bolden was my fourth grade teacher. She was a statuesque woman with a big, warm smile and an expansive personality. She was larger than life in every single way. She wore clothes and she dressed unlike any teachers I'd ever had seen before. At a time when the accepted fashion amongst the Northside elementary school teachers was suits, preferably in subdued pastel shades of blues or rose, Mrs. Bolden wore brightly colored flowing scarves, ponchos, and large ethnic jewelry. In winter, she even wore a flowing big cape. We kids loved her. She was our Mary Poppins, and just like the British nanny with her umbrella landing smack dab in front of the door of her new charges, Mrs. Bolden entered our fourth grade classroom stern, firm, and definitely eccentric. Mrs. Bolden was a bit more than the good citizens of Eureka were used to, but she was left to do her job as she saw fit. She was commanding and wealthy. She was a perfect example of the old saying, "Money talks." No one ever questioned her in any form or fashion. I know she went to Europe every summer because she always brought back unusual tins and packages of food for her students to try. Smoked oysters, sardines, butter crackers from France, and one time, escargot. She was rumored to have been married more than once, each time to a wealthy man. No one knew for sure, and it was the source of endless speculation amongst our mothers when they gathered at PTA meetings. Just like Mary Poppins, Mrs. Bolden was a mystery. I didn't fully understand the implication of Mrs. Bolden's marital or economic status at the time. I thought of her as being older than Methuselah, but now I think she was way younger than I am now, probably in her 40s. Her standards were high, and we all rose to the occasion. She was passionate about literature and the arts. And she did her best to pass that enthusiasm on to the children of Eureka, who accepted it in various degrees. As for me, she changed my life completely. Well, people who know me today, they have a really hard time believing when I tell them how timid and shy I was as a child. I actually shudder to think of the direction my life would have taken had Mrs. Bolden not noticed the very quiet girl in the back of the classroom who never checked out a book from the library. But one day she took me aside. "Kathy," she said, "there's a book I'd like you to read. It's called Honestly, Katie John. The main character reminds me of you. I think you will like her. Please give this book a try, shall we?" I didn't answer, but I guess my face showed that I seriously doubted her because she added, "Don't worry about how long it takes you to read the book, dear. If you are not finished by library period next week, you can check it out again. But Kathy, please give it a try." Her voice was so full of kindness and concern that it would have been mean of me to protest. Gosh, wanting to please her, I took the book home and I started reading it that night. Well, right off the bat, I knew it was different from any book that I'd ever read before. Katie John was around my age, and like me, she wasn't like other girls our age. She loved the outdoors, she liked riding her bike, and she thought it was ridiculous the way her best friend had taken to wanting to wear a bra and even lipstick. Yuck! She didn't much care for boys that way, even though her other best friend was a boy. She felt misunderstood and just wanted everything to stay the same. Life was changing way too fast. She hated the way all the girls had started acting like the sun, moon, and stars revolved around the boys. Well, Mrs. Bolden had found the perfect book for the perfect tomboy. Instead of reading for a few minutes and then feeling bored as I usually did, I kept turning the pages until my mother yelled, "Lights out!" I could not believe it. It was already time for bed. As I fell asleep, I kept thinking about that book. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Before even getting out of bed, I opened it to where I left off and I finished it before school. Mrs. Bolden had been right. I didn't just like Katie John. I was Katie John. I felt an enormous sense of relief and happiness. For the first time in my life, I wasn't an oddball. I knew there had to be other girls out there who were just like me. I really had thought I was the only one who was self-conscious about the way I looked. Once when I was mowing the yard, a neighbor asked my mother, "What boy is mowing your yard, Mary? I could use some good help." My mother never let me forget that story. She repeated it over and over. I secretly had begun to like boys. One boy named Dana Mosier in particular. But my mother, probably sensing that I was growing up too fast, would declare to people, "Kathy doesn't like boys. She is far too busy with her studies to be involved with that." I learned through Katie John that you could be a tomboy and you could like boys too. You did not have to get yourself all made up and focus all your attention on the boys to be a girl. That book made me begin to see that nothing horrible would happen to you if you spoke up for yourself. Except when I was alone with my sisters or friends, I spent most of my childhood afraid I would do something wrong and be punished. I wanted to be just like Katie John, so I began to emulate her. I began to be brave. The very next morning in school, I bravely walked up in front of the class before all my classmates to return the book to Mrs. Bolden. Surprised to see me boldly standing in front of her desk, she raised her eyebrows. "You finished the book, Kathy?" "Yes, Mrs. Bolden, and please, are there any more books just like this one?" She was beaming. And so I was too, as she walked me over to the bookshelf and pointed out there were more Katie John books. I even forgot those minutes that I was walking in front of the class to get a book. All I could think was that I could not wait to read the next one. I knew Katie John would lead me to a happier life, and it did. Well, a couple years ago, actually, this has been quite a long time ago, I was reading Oprah Winfrey's magazine, Oh. I love to read her back page and enjoy her own personal inspiring stories. That month, she was talking about the first book that turned her on to reading. My eyes could not read fast enough. When she asked to read a book report she had written in front of the class, that was the minute she decided that reading was important. She'd been rewarded for reading and for writing such a good report. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the title of the book that had turned her on to reading. Honestly, Katie John by Mary Calhoun. Well, I share this story with everybody I know. The story tolled the bell for putting the right book in the hand of the right reader. Sometimes children used to, wander into my shop, or their parents would be out shopping, and I'd ask them, what is your favorite book? If they didn't have one, I'd ask them, what do you like to do for fun? And then I'd ask them, what is your favorite movie? 9 times out of 10, they would name a movie that was based upon a book. You should see the look on their faces when I tell them, did you know that was a book first? Did you know The Wizard of Oz was a book? It was a series of books before it was a film? That's because I come from Kansas, y'all. They cannot wait to read a book when they find this out. And I'll tell them about the movie I saw as a child, Mary Poppins, starring Julie Andrews. Until I was given Mary Poppins as a book, I too had thought it was only a movie. I love that book, and I remember for Christmas one year, I got a Mary Poppins doll, and even came with a valise and an umbrella. Well, I have learned that when children love a story, they want to hear it over and over and over again. I always tell them with a wink in my eye, and guess what? The book is always better. That child can hardly wait to plop down and get reading. I can see in their eyes that I've lost them. They're already thinking of the story and dreaming of reading the book. Once I discovered Katie John, I moved on, y'all. I read and I read and I read. And I always tell people, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit of this as I read from the story, that books did save me. I was so painfully shy as a child. You can't understand it unless you read this book. So I hope you do. It's the first book you read when you join my book club. So yes, books save me. Of that I'm certain. Just as I was saved by the baptism of the holy waters, I have been saved by the power of the written word. I've been fortunate to have many great teachers through the years. Jesus was a great teacher, and I still recall my 12-year-old self looking up to the stained glass window above the balcony of our church and seeing Jesus with his flock of lambs. The light would shine through in all those beautiful colors, red, blue, purple, and gold. And I remember the song, Jesus Loves the Little Children, all the children of the world. Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Well, to this day, I hold all teachers in high regard. Let's face it, folks. Our children often spend more time with their teachers than they do with us. Oh, Mrs. Bolden, because of her and others, I understand an impact of what teachers can have on our lives. They don't recognize always that some little seed can be planted that will grow into the most fruitful garden. That is why reading is so important and is the basis of all education. A child may be lacking in so many of the basic needs: food, shelter, family, and even love. But if you teach a child to read, you have given them the tools to educate themselves. You've given them the tools to find their way and their salvation. Education is the key to a better life. Now you know why I'm on a mission to get the world reading. Well, I want to stop and interject something here. This is the Pulpwood Queen Film Club. But you know, it was those films I watched as a child too that made me, when my teachers would tell me, did you know To Kill a Mockingbird was a book? I could not hardly wait to read the book because I was also Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird, the wonderful, wonderful Pulitzer Prize winning book, Academy Award winning film. The book was written by Harper Lee. So we are now going to embark on a movie that changes my life. I thought To Kill a Mockingbird was my favorite film of all time. It is. But this next film that we're going to watch that comes from India, and I know this is out of a lot of people's comfort zone because it has English subtitles, but please watch it because it is so important of how one art teacher changed a young boy's trajectory in life forever. So the last I'd like to end you with is, if any of you know a teacher who's made a difference in your life, or a person who's changed your life, please tell him or her and thank them personally. I was never able to thank Mrs. Bolden in life. In fact, She made such a difference. But I talk about many of my teachers, including Mrs. Carolyn Perrier was one of my favorite teachers, and Mr. Lewis Hayward, and Mr. Lassiter, my English literature teacher. We had wonderful teachers growing up in my small rural town in Kansas. And if you're a teacher out there, thank you. Thank you. Please watch the film. I posted it on the Pulpwood Queen Film Club site. It's on YouTube for free. It has English subtitles. You can probably find it on different Amazon Prime or Netflix, but I'm trying to find as many of these films for you that you can watch where it isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg. Thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you, Lana, for my fabulous new sari from India. I have to tell you, you all, I know that a lot of people can't understand why this crazy woman loves to dress up from other cultures of the world, but it's with the highest honor and respect, because the color, the cinematography, the songs, the dance of Bollywood, I'm telling you, it is just absolutely the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So I have really, really enjoyed the Bollywood films, and I hope you will enjoy Taare Zameen Par tonight, starring Amir Khan. And we'll see you for discussion afterwards or throughout the week, because if you can't watch it tonight, just watch it sometime and tell me what you think about the film. Thank you, Patricia White, Beth Honia, Kristen Chambers. I'm looking at all the people: James Conroy, Martin, Susie Q. Law, Betty Hunt Koval, Janice Geldmeyer Miller, Annette Mulliken Brazil. Let me see who else is here. Annette Mastron. I am just so thankful that you all have joined the film club. Tell all your friends. I'll be in costume or some kind of outfit every week. So Saturday night at the movies, Namaste. And I just learned a new phrase, filmalinge. So I'm learning Hindi. I'm watching these films so much, and it's broadened my horizons. Be a lifelong learner. It's all about the story. Namaste. Bye-bye.